Welcome into episode 62 of the Two Pad Stack podcast. I'm your host, Ace. Back in the seat, I can actually, formulate a few sentences together in a row without wheezing and coughing into oblivion. So glad to be back. Thank you, Jake, for driving the boat last week alongside Nick from the Goalie Hugs podcast. So thank you very much, Nick, once again for joining. If you can't tell, it looks like Nick's going to be a regular contributor when we have some illnesses or people are otherwise disposed of. So thanks again for Nick. But I'm very glad to be back. You guys got to break down a fun episode last week. A lot of wins for you guys to talk about last week.
Yeah, and then I had said at the very beginning of last week's episode, I feel like I'm jinxing ourselves being here, that I was away the week before and they had done so well. I was like, I felt very weird sitting there, like I don't know how it's going to mess with the mojo, and clearly it did something.
Yeah, I mean, that was it, right? I mean, it was a soft, we talked about it before. It was like a soft part of the schedule. It was a good time for the Boston Bruins to make a coaching change. It was a good time for Joe Sacco to come in and, get some wins under his belt and get feeling good. The team was confident. And, what is a great thing to do for a team that's feeling confident? You think that maybe going on a West Coast trip with the team would be a good thing to keep that mojo going because, if you have any exposure to the hockey world, there's nothing quite like a roadie to really bring the team together. That was not the case to start this roadie. Holy smokes. So we're going to go ahead and break down the week that was first and foremost. You know the structure now that Jake's with us here. Just kind of how it works now. But before we do that, I'm just going to play the world's smallest violin yet again. I do not. Thank you, Jake. Appreciate that. Jake's playing the world's smallest violin for those of you not watching the YouTube, which we are on YouTube. Check us out. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel there. I hate West Coast trips. I absolutely abhor them. And I love it for one perspective because I get to see teams that I don't otherwise see, which is cool. I get to see barns that I don't otherwise see. It's always cool to see what other players or other teams are working with. Like, for example, we're going to talk about the Seattle Kraken in a little bit. Like, their arena is really cool. Like, they just rebuilt the whole thing, Climate Pledge Arena. Really, it looks like just a single floor building if you look at it from outside because they dug down and they built down instead of building up. So you walk in and you just walk down into your seats, which is just so cool. So, but yeah, I do not enjoy staying up late. I am good for like maybe one period at these 10 p.m. puck drops, and then I just peter out. I can't do it.
I'm the night owl. I'm the opposite. I love staying up for late night puck drops, 10 o'clock, 10:30. My mind's buzzing at like 12:30, 1 o'clock. It's like, all right, I'm ready to go. Let's hit this third period running.
Nice. All right, well, we'll go ahead and break those down here. First off, like I said, Bruins are flying high. Why don't you go visit the Jets if you're flying high? So Jets are, I'll preface this with acknowledging that the Winnipeg Jets are a pretty good team. They're probably one of the upper echelon teams here. And it was a good opportunity for the Boston Bruins, who are coming off a few wins here, to see how they stack up. It's a measuring stick game, if you will. Oh boy, was that measuring stick much, much taller than what they were able to stand up to. That was abysmal. The Boston Bruins fell to the Winnipeg Jets by a score of 8-1. And that top line for Winnipeg just dominated the Boston Bruins that game.
For years I've called Winnipeg a paper tiger, that they look ferocious on a score sheet. And then when you play them on, it's like, really? This is what you're going up against? We got the claws on what was it, Tuesday evening. We got massacred out there. It, like, from start to finish, it just wasn't pretty.
Yeah, I mean, Scheifele collected. Did he get the hat trick, or was it just 2 goals and an assist?
I think it was just 2.
Yeah, so he had 3 points, 2 goals and an assist. I mean, there was a lot of talk back when the Bruins had a lot of cap space opened up, and before Winnipeg was able to come to an agreement with Mark Scheifele. There's a lot of talk about Scheifele wanting to move on and test the market. And people, I mean, I don't know how much truth there was to this, but usually when there's smoke, there's a little bit of flame there. But I mean, Bruins had no more Patrice Bergeron. There was suddenly a void in the top 6 center position. Mark Scheifele was available via trade, allegedly. So there's a lot of people connecting the Boston Bruins to Mark Scheifele. That didn't happen, obviously. Mark Scheifele is a Winnipeg Jet, and man, I wish he was on the other side of the ice instead of on the Winnipeg side in that game, because he looked great. Everything was just going in the net for him. He was finding the soft areas of the ice. The defense was just getting lost. It was a very frustrating evening if you were one of the few Bruins fans that stayed up and watched the whole game.
Well, his counterpoint in Elias Lindholm, who is a Bruin, had a rough one as a -3. I think almost everybody looked lost in this one. I think, they got punched in the mouth really quickly, and they just straight up didn't recover from it. It was just honestly, I was at a bar with my girlfriend, and I kept peering up at the TV, and it's like, stop, just turn it off, switch to something else. They looked done. This like it was what three goals in the first period or something. I was like, all right, we're not coming
Yeah.
back from this one.
Yeah. It honestly felt like that too. Like after that first period, I'm like, all right, TV goes off. Like I think it's time to go to bed. Nothing's gonna be, happening out of this. It's not like the Bruins from 2 years ago where you could never count them out. They would always tooth and fight back, tooth and nail, claw their way back into a game. I don't ever have that feeling about this Boston Bruins team. They have to really have control of a game if they're going to close it out, and not a lot of heroics going on with this roster.
Mhm.
So yeah, that game's done. We're moving on. Everybody has a bad game from time to time. It's how you respond, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys, turn the page. Let's just go ahead and regroup. It's a rough way to start the road trip, but the good news is it's just 2 points. There's an opportunity to go win another 2 points over in Seattle. And the Kraken are not as complete of a team as the Winnipeg Jets. So let's get out there and play better. And I mean, I'll say that I feel like they did play better. I'll admit that. I mean, you look at just the simple box scores. Bruins outshot Seattle 34-21. And Grubauer, who the Kraken really prioritized in the expansion draft, played a hell of a game. I mean, he made 33 out of 34 saves for the Seattle Kraken. But it just
For
wasn't
one.
good. Yeah, exactly. He hasn't really quite lived up to the billing yet for the Kraken so far, but he did in that game, that's for sure.
It's felt like Joey Dacord's net in Seattle this year, but I'll agree with you there. Nick said last week that Seattle was probably going to be something of a trap game, and it certainly ended up being that. And if you take away the first period, I'll agree with you. The Bruins played a good game, but it was genuinely just the way from the get-go they started at the game. Pastrnak takes that double minor for high sticking 16, 20 seconds in. You immediately give up a goal on that first minor. You're down 2-0 after the first. You gave up 2 goals in the first minute of pack. So you're already down 2-0 again. So you put yourself on the back burner. Marchand had that gorgeous penalty shot, vintage. I think it was extremely well drawn by Brazo to go crashing into the net, force. I don't know which Kraken it was who covered the puck, but force the penalty shot by scrambling them in their crease was really good. And then you just took your foot off the gas in the entire third period. So, good parts of the game, but in the end, they shot themselves in the foot again.
Well, it's once again like a quality versus quantity conversation, right? The Bruins are not a quality offensive team for opportunity generation. Obviously when Joe Sacco took over, it seems like that mentality shifted to just be volume. Like there's no such thing as a bad shot on goal. We don't have a legion of snipers in our roster. Like let's just throw the puck on net, hope some havoc happens, and a guy like Morgan Geekie can pot in a goal. And that just didn't quite seem to come to fruition in this Seattle game. And they couldn't mitigate that, rush offense that the Seattle Kraken had. I mean, Oliver Bjorkstrand, who's a good skilled player, ended up getting a couple of goals, and shout out to him because he's a Dane and I'm Danish. So let's go, Oliver. Way to go, buddy. A couple other notes that I want to mention before we move on from this Kraken game. I was really disappointed to see Korpisalo struggle a lot. There was a couple of these goals that I thought he probably should have had. And going back even to the Winnipeg game, one of the beautiful things that the Boston Bruins have had for a long, long time is a goalie tandem that's going to push each other. And when one goalie kind of drops the ball, the other goalie picks it up. And that Winnipeg game, where I felt like Jeremy Swayman almost quit, like he didn't even look like he wanted to be in the net anymore toward the end of it, I told myself, it's okay. We'll go to Corpy. We have Corpy here. And then Corpy kind of had our stinker too. So back-to-back stinkers by both goalies was a little disappointing to see, and really not what I'm used to seeing out of the Boston Bruins. But what were your thoughts on Korpisalo's performance?
Yeah, it looked like he was fighting the puck a little bit. And it happens. I think you get rattled really quickly in with that first power play goal. Vince Dunn's goal that was batted in is one you kind of go, oh, really? But it definitely looked like he was kind of fighting it most of the night. I don't know whether some of it was miscommunication with his defense. I don't know whether some of it was his vision, but Definitely a rough one for him, and you got to feel for him. Hopefully it's the once in a blue moon thing for him because he's looked consistent most of the year. So maybe he was just due for the stinker and it was ill timed, and this isn't a trend.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, he wasn't my biggest loser in this game. That has got to go to Tyler Johnson with his -4. Now, I acknowledge that plus minus is a team stat. It's not going to paint the entire picture, but you know, I really thought Tyler Johnson had more in the tank than what he's shown so far. And at this point, he seems like a serviceable 13th forward. I really don't want to see him in the lineup regularly at this point.
Well, we'll talk about some news from earlier in the week as well that might put Tyler Johnson back on the waiver wire. We'll
Yep.
see.
We'll break it down in a little bit. We've got some fun local New England news to go into to talk about that stuff. So, other not so great player, that's got to go to Trent Frederick with his -3 in that game. And we'll talk a lot about Trent Frederick later on as well. But yeah, I think we probably put a little bow on that Seattle Kraken game. Any other final thoughts on that matchup, Jake?
No, I think, they certainly should have felt dejected after that one because Nick and I talked so much about how you needed to win at least 3 of these games on the West Coast trip to feel like Sacco was solidly doing a good job, and to lose the first 2 of them outright and as poorly as they did has to be really dejecting. So the fact that they basically need to take the rest of these 3, and we'll talk about Vancouver coming up, but,
Yep.
it puts a lot of pressure on you.
Yep. And Vancouver's had a pretty good start to the season too. And Jake DeBrusk is leading the way for the Vancouver Canucks with 14 goals in the season. And Boston Bruins, after getting punched in the mouth twice, they show up. Another wonderful 10 p.m. puck drop. And holy smokes, who is this Boston Bruins team? Because they came out with their foot down on the gas and applied pressure on the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks looked lost in their defensive zone coverage. Bruins were making plays. The power play zipped it around and made a backdoor one-timer to Marchand for the 1-0 goal. Like, I mean, everybody knows everybody in Vancouver hates Brad Marchand. I mean, he's the last member of the team from 2011 still on this roster. And every time he touched the puck, Rogers Center crowd, boo! And what does he do? Literally in that same shift as he's getting booed, he buries that puck backdoor and he puts that hand right up to his ear and he says, I don't hear you now. Keep booing. Keep booing. What a great start to the game for that Boston Bruins team over in Vancouver there. Great first period.
That goal epitomizes what I've been begging out of the power play. Puck movement and player movement. It started Marchand had the puck at the top of the point. He drops it off on the half wall to Pasternak. And then you watch Marchand slide from the point all the way down. You watch Zacha, who is sitting at the top of the point as well, rotate back into the slot. So he draws defenders to him. It leaves Marchand to keep drifting to the far post where nobody's covering him. And it lets Pasternak find that puck down to Lindholm. Lindholm across the crease to a wide open Marchand. Those are those quiet looks where you're drawing defenders away from space and you have guys who can sneak in and you're moving the puck efficiently that I've been begging for weeks for this power play to do. I was like drooling at the mouth after he scored that goal. It's one of the best team goals I've seen all season.
It looked like vintage, like Patrice Bergeron era power play movement when he was with David Pasternak and Brad Marchand and everybody else like that. It was wild. It was great to see, and I hope we see more of that. We didn't see any more of that in the power play for the rest of the game, but it was a nice little glimpse in to remind all the Boston Bruins fans that hey, these guys do have this capacity when they can just get out of this funk that they're in, that they've been in all season on the man advantage. So that was good. It was also good. I just alluded to it. Some of that, not necessarily even greasy, was a nice play. And Morgan Geekie gets on the board as well with a beautiful pass from David Pasternak from behind the net. Finds Geekie in that soft area right in the slot, and he's uncovered for some reason, and he just bangs in the one-timer. And it's 2-0 Boston. Just gorgeous.
You talk about forecheck. They were grinding along the walls. They forced a turnover. Zacha gets it down to Pasta. Pasta spins, goes back around the other side of the net, and has that clear feed to Geekie in front. It's working hard. We just talked about quantity versus quality. That's both quantity and quality. Like, that's a beautiful, you've got that doorstep chance. You've got Pasta on the back door coming forward already if there's a rebound, but the fact that Geekie puts it in himself, Those are the types of plays you want to see the Bruins score more. You need guys getting into gritty areas. You need them cycling. You need them working down low. That's how these Bruins, I feel, are going to score a majority of their goals this season going forward.
Yeah, and I felt like that goal was like the type of shot that Geeky would just shoot into a pad earlier in the season. He just managed to actually put it where he needed to. And I hope that that can kind of be a little bit of momentum that Morgan Geeky, friend of the show, can kind of work with and maybe parlay into some better improved play and some more offense going on here. Gotta give our kudos to Canucks forward Max Sasson for his first ever NHL goal against the Boston Bruins. It was in garbage time to make it 5-1, but hey, you only get your first NHL goal once, so congrats to him. Some quick box score notes in this one. Pavel Zacha and David Pastrnak both were +3. Pasta, I believe, had 4 points in this affair, including a
Mhm.
goal. Zacha had a nice goal. I really like that the Boston Bruins didn't. I already mentioned this earlier. They didn't take their foot off the gas, and when they had the lead, they kept applying pressure and they extended the lead. And that's not something that we've seen a lot for them this season. So, really, really, really like this performance by the Bees in a really hostile environment against a good team.
Vancouver has had a good start to the season. They are in a bit of a weird place that Elias Pettersson isn't producing as much as they need to. Their goaltending situation has been weird. I think Thatcher Demko is now their third goalie of the season or fourth. He's finally healthy again, the former BC Eagle. But you know, again, it's against a team who's been trending well with former Bruins Jake DeBrusk, Stanton Heinen, who scored a goal in the previous game before they played the Bruins. Good to kind of show these guys maybe what they're missing a little bit. So, nice win. Good for confidence going into the weekend.
Yep. So that was it. That was your 3 games of the week since our last recording. We're gonna go ahead and kind of just give you a quick update on Bruins related news from around the league before we dive into what's going to be going on in the next week moving forward, and before we give our studs and duds for the week. So a little bit of roster related news. A lot of Bruins fans were clamoring for some roster changes after that Seattle Kraken loss, and for good reason. It was like Jake mentioned earlier. The team had to be pretty dejected and pretty down morally after those back-to-back losses. And at this point, the fans were too, and obviously the front office recognized the need to inject some scoring into this lineup. And what better way to do that than to find maybe a younger scoring forward that is due for a change of scenery? And even better if you don't have to pay any assets for it. Don't you think, Jake?
Absolutely. Taking advantage of a team who's found themselves in a big funk, a metro area, frankly, that's been in a big funk between two of these clubs. But the New York Rangers put both Pierre Engvall and Oliver Wahlstrom on waivers, and the Bruins claim Wahlstrom, the former 11th overall draft pick in the 2018 draft. The former, I think he was a BC Eagle too. I know he went to the U.S. National
1
Development
year.
Program. Yeah, 1 year at BC. Okay.
Yep.
And then, everyone's saying it's coming full circle. The kid from the mini one-on-ones who had the beautiful spinorama duster past the goalie. So a little bit of cosmic karma coming back his way. I love he picked number 71 because the guy who came in needing some redemption after a tough start to his year and certainly redeemed himself enough to get a good contract is Taylor Hall. So maybe 71 will be a lucky number for Wallstrom here in Boston.
Yeah, yeah, and also shout out to Taylor Hall, who was coming off a rough season last year and had to shut it down early, get surgery. He's coming back, and he's on my fantasy team. He's collecting me a few goals here and there, so keep it going, Taylor. Maybe, hopefully, he's a pending UFA. Maybe a reunion with the Boston Bruins could be in the cards. So who
Maybe.
knows? Oliver Wahlstrom, like Jake had mentioned, TD Garden mini one-on-one. You're going to see it a million times on Ness, and I already know it. I mean, the Bruins have already put it out on their social media, but he's like, I grew up right here in New England. He's from Portland, Maine. His dad was actually a rink manager in Saco, Maine for a little bit there, so he got a lot of extra ice time when he was growing up, and he grew up a Bruins fan. And he had the quote today from the locker room that he grew up watching Marchand, and it's like, man, like I'm getting old. Like I remember watching this kid on Nesson on the mini one-on-one thing, and now he's saying he grew up watching Marchand. I didn't even grow up watching Marchand. I grew up watching, Joe Thornton and Marco Sturm and all that kind of stuff. Like I was already a grown ass man by the time I feel like Marchand rolled around. So, but it's cool. We got a former Bruins fan on the team. He's got a lot of high offensive upside. There's a reason why he was drafted 11th overall. A lot of people really clamor for his shot release, his ability to be accurate, but for one reason or another, it just didn't work out with the Islanders. And I know Wallstrom's hoping to really kind of rebuild his career here, and he's a restricted free agent at the end of this year, so the Bruins will retain his rights as long as they don't waive him, because they can't send him down to Providence without waiving him. So he's kind of NHL or bust right now for the Boston Bruins. But he signed to a relatively okay contract. It's a 1 year, $1 million deal, so it's just slightly above minimum. So it's something that the Boston Bruins can work with right now. And Jake alluded to it earlier. I do kind of think that maybe you know depending on how he looks, this may result in, hey, Tyler Johnson, Providence could probably use you.
Speaking of Providence, there's someone else in Providence who looks like they could finally come back up again. 6 goals in 6 games for Matt Patra.
Is that
Like,
good? A goal per game? Is that good?
I think it's pretty good. I think the Bruins and the front office have accomplished exactly what they wanted to with Patra going down to Providence. They wanted him to get his mojo going, play some top line minutes, get his confidence going, get him cooking again. He's on fire. He's cooking. He's got the whole kitchen burning down right now. So I feel like if there's ever a time to call him up right now, it should be at this point in the season. I credit to Mark McLaughlin. He got a nice little butt goal off of Eric Brandstrom in the Vancouver game. But maybe you send Tyler Johnson and Mark McLaughlin down. You've got Wallstrom activated. You have Patra in the lineup, and you've got your kind of right wingers looking like Wallstrom, Patra, Brazo, and Pasternak in any way, shape, or form. But to me, that looks like a really interesting depth chart down the right wing going forward.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, I've seen a lot of people clamoring for Potter to come up now, and I'm not necessarily rushing that. I like that he's producing at this level, and get the kid some confidence back. It's not hurting anybody to keep him down there, and really get his game to a comfortable spot before we call him up. Because I mean, I don't want him coming up and playing wing. I want him coming up and playing center, and I think he's playing center right now. I'm pretty sure he's playing center down in Providence, is he not?
I believe so. My problem is, who do you shift off center to go to the wing? Are you shifting
Right.
Beecher to go back and play a right winger on his off wing? Are you putting Kepke back on his off wing?
Yeah.
Where
And I
does
don't
Pasternak, and
want
are
Patra
you
at 4C anyway. I would want him as 3C or 2C in a, elevated role. I would like to keep that fourth line together if at all possible.
that's I mean, it's tough because I'm looking at daily faceoff right now. That fourth line right now is Kepke, Beecher, McLaughlin. So that fourth line is already broken up with Kastelik playing third line right wing. But now you've got Wallstrom slotted as third line right wing.
Yeah.
So how do you move these pieces around? Ostensibly, McLaughlin's going to sit.
Yeah.
Kastelik slots back as 4C, and then Wallstrom goes in there.
Yeah,
But
I don't even know why McMuffin got the call up to begin with. Like, I understand he
yeah,
was doing well in Providence, but it still just
yeah,
seemed arbitrary. It's like, I feel like I feel like Joe Sacco said, "Hey Don, I could use one of those kids from Providence that's lighting it up." And Don
yeah.
Sweeney's like, "Okay, one McLaughlin coming up. No, not that kid, not that kid. Oh, sorry, the call up's already been processed." And it's like, oh, yeah. But anyways, really think that the answer is, you put Wallstrom on the third line right wing. And I do think that Wallstrom has the potential of moving up higher and bumping Geeky down. I think he's got the skill set to do that. And I think Geeky would be better suited to be further down in the lineup. But yeah, I mean, my ideal right wings, I mean, you got Pasta, you got
So
Wallstrom.
Pasta, Geeky, Wallstrom,
Yeah.
and
Then,
whoever you feel like as
yeah,
that off line, whether it's Beach on his off wing, Kepke on his
Stellick.
off wing, Kastelik. Well,
Yeah.
Kastelik I'd probably have as 4C, but
Yeah. Well, Beecher or
yeah,
Costello, either way.
yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yep. So that's our thoughts there on that one. Bruins have been in kind of the speculation mode by insider Elliot Friedman in his 32 Thoughts podcast recently as well. You'd think after all the coaching shenanigans that the Bruins could just enjoy a little bit of quiet and peace in regards to the national media. That's not happening. There is a lot of speculation going on regarding the status of Trent Frederick, who is a pending unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. Elliot Friedman is reporting that, quote, a lot of teams are interested in Trent Frederick and they want to know if Boston really thinks they're going to sign him. He went further and said, there are definitely some teams out there that feel that the Boston Bruins and Trent Frederick will not be able to get a deal done. But I was really warned about saying that. What are your thoughts on the Frederick reports?
If you're gonna sell him, I feel like you're selling him at a low right now. I feel like if it's gonna happen now is not the time. He's not playing great hockey. He's not putting everything in the back of the net. I know he had a really good goal at home a couple of games ago, but he's not in a position where I think you're selling high on him right now, and I think it would be a mistake to do it at this moment. But if you know you're not gonna re-sign him, you'd rather get something for nothing out of him. The question is, I don't know what his price is. Like, I don't
Yeah.
think you're getting a first rounder for Freddie as much as I would love that. I just don't know what kind of package you're gonna get, who the contenders are. St. Louis maybe could strong arm him out. I could see Dallas or Colorado maybe doing it as well. Man, imagine a Colorado team with Trent Frederick and Miles Wood on it kind of scares the crap out of me. Guys who skeet fast and hit hard. But
When is the last time he hit hard? I don't remember that.
but I just don't know I don't know what you're gonna get out of him price wise right now. And
That's
so
it. Is like where. So it's not just like the compensation from other teams, but it's like what on earth is his agent expecting here?
mhm,
Because if the speculation that is coming out from Elliot Friedman seems to indicate that the ask is very high and there's no way that the Boston Bruins would meet it. And for good reason. I don't think Trent Frederick is a guy that should be making $5-6 million a year if that's what he's looking for. I think Trent Frederick is like a $3 million a year guy. You know,
max.
it's just not there for me. And yeah, he can say I'm a former first round pick and I bring a unique skill set. Like, I don't even know what Trent Frederick I'm gonna get on a given night. Am I gonna get, garbage cleanup in the slot Trent Frederick that we got at home a couple nights ago? Or are we gonna get enforcer Trent Frederick that's gonna try to fight everybody? Are we gonna get, invisible Trent Frederick? Like it's like the multiverse in Marvel. Like which version of Trent Frederick are we gonna get from a nightly basis? Which Trent Frederick is gonna step through that multiverse portal? And I don't know what we're gonna get. And you want to pay somebody for consistency. You want to know what a player is going to bring to the table every single night. I don't know what I'm ever going to get from Trent Frederick on a nightly basis. And I don't think I can commit more than $3 million a year to a guy like that, at least with the cap the way it currently is. And if that's what he's looking for, and this is all speculation by me, if he's looking for 5-6 million a year, I hope the St. Louis Blues pay it. I hope you go and hang out with your family down there in St. Louis because it ain't coming from the Boston Bruins. And I would take whatever I could get in return for him. And I would play McMuffin over Trent Frederick, for God's sakes.
St. Louis also traded for Cam Fowler this week. They are paying for 4 of the 5 defensemen in the NHL who are over 30 and make over $6.5 million in average annual value a year. Granted, I know that Anaheim retained some cap on that, but still, just absolutely hysterical the decision making that St. Louis is doing, even with Monty behind the bench there. I will say Freddie did get that one punch fight in Winnipeg that made him look good. But also, to another point you had, you know who can also say they're a first rounder, former first rounder, and they're getting paid $1 million a year? Oliver Wahlstrom.
Yep. Yep. I mean, I wonder if it's all posturing because Freddie is trying to force his way out and he wants to be done with the Boston Bruins because now he's not an RFA. The Bruins don't retain his rights. They can't take him to arbitration because they did have arbitration scheduled with him twice, I believe.
Mhm.
And I don't think that his he probably heard some of the stories from Jeremy Swayman, who says, "Oh, arbitration's really mean. It's scary and not fun." And they settled before arbitration both times. So now the Bruins don't retain control. He can walk straight to unrestricted free agency. He never shuts up about St. Louis. He loves St. Louis. His family's still down there. Maybe he just really wants to go to St. Louis. And maybe the Blues know that, kind of like how the Blues knew that Jim Montgomery wanted to go to St. Louis. So I don't know. That's all my speculation is that that's what's going on here. And it wouldn't surprise me if a team will trade for Trent Frederick just as a rental because they know he's probably going to St. Louis. So
It feels like the Jake DeBrusk saga all over again, that you would always hear whispers that he wanted to go, that he requested a trade, that he was gonna go XYZ, he would go to Western Canada, he'd go to Edmonton, he'd go to Vancouver, and nothing ever happened. So I'll be very intrigued to see if something actually does happen on this front, because it just feels eerily similar. A young forward in a contract year, possibly looking out, and you never know.
yeah, I wouldn't be heartbroken if Trent Frederick isn't a Boston Bruin anymore. It is what it is. He's not a guy that moves the needle for me.
I know there are some people who would be, but I don't
Yeah, there
know.
was a lot of people that loved Oscar Steen for God's sake. So I really don't. Never mind. I'm not going to go any further. We'll stop there. So before we continue, before we jump into studs and duds, any closing thoughts on the Frederick thing, Jake?
Just wait a little bit. If you're gonna trade him, if you're gonna send him out, let him get his value back up a little bit. If you're gonna call this whole thing a wash, at least make sure his value is good enough where you're gonna get something actually valuable. If you're gonna get an NHL ready prospect out of it, if you're gonna get a high second round draft pick out of it, like just wait.
So something that was proposed to me in a Discord that I'm in that I just chat hockey in, and somebody, if you haven't heard, also out of St. Louis, Brandon Saad, they're looking to move Brandon Saad, two-time Cup winner with the Chicago Blackhawks, just hasn't quite worked out for one reason or another. Said the Blues are even willing to get creative to move the contract, whether that means retaining salary or whatever. I don't know. What happens if they call you up and say, "Hey, we'll give you Brandon Saad and a second round pick for Trent Frederick"?
I just wouldn't want it to turn into necessarily a Pat Maroon or a Rick Nash situation where, he's maybe not the rightest fit on the team. It's interesting to have a guy who brings leadership. We thought we were getting that in Tyler Johnson, though, with a two-time Stanley Cup champion. So, I don't know. I'm not loving that move, but I could totally see it being something that Don Sweeney would do. I wouldn't do it, but
Yeah.
if they're creative with the cap and you're getting an NHL player like that,
Yeah, and
you
he's
know,
only 32. It's not like he's like 36 years old and completely washed. So he
right.
is under contract for 2 years, I believe, at 6 million per. So this year would be one of his final 2 years. But I
Have
mean,
him
yeah,
retain 50%.
yeah, there we go. So um if a team just randomly called up and said, "Hey, we'll give you a first round pick for Trent," would you just say bye Trent?
Yeah. If
Yeah,
it's a
I think
first
I'm
rounder,
right there
yeah,
with you.
I'm taking it.
Yeah, yeah. Even if it's like the New Jersey
29th overall,
Devils or
yeah.
yeah, late first. I think I'm still good. All right, we're gonna go ahead and jump over and give our sponsors a shout out, and we'll be back in a second.
This season, the Two Pad Stack podcast is proudly supported by two fantastic local businesses. First, we're going to give a shout out to Earth Eagle Brewings, where great beer meets great company. With locations in both Portsmouth and Somersworth, New Hampshire, Earth Eagle is something for everybody. Whether you're relaxing in their Portsmouth beer garden or enjoying live music and trivia at the Somersworth pub, you'll be in good hands with their craft beers, epic hot dogs, and much more. And don't forget, if you're into brewing your own beer, their homebrew shop has you covered in Somersworth. And when it comes to tattooing, there's no better place than Vital Ink Tattoo in Barrington, New Hampshire. The artists at Vital Ink are all about turning your ideas into tattoos you'll love forever. The team works hard to make sure every visit is comfortable, and their dedication to making your tattoo experience fun and relaxing is unmatched. Whether you're getting your first piece or adding to your collection, Vital Ink is the place to go. Special thanks to both of these sponsors for supporting the Two Pad Stack podcast this season. Be sure to check them out and show them some love.
All right, and we're back. So time for studs and duds. I'm not going to go into a lot of stats here. I'm just going to give you my stud and my dud, and we can chat about it a little bit. But for a player that has really gotten a lot of extra attention due to the lack of production so far this year, I got to give a big boy shout out to David Pastrnak, who had a hell of a game against the Vancouver Canucks. Maybe didn't score as many goals as he maybe could have, but he's collecting the points and he's being a leader in that game. I was really impressed with his game. Moved the puck well on the power play, set up that goal for Brad Marchand, set up the geeky goal, got a nice wraparound of his own. Really, really, really played well, I think, in that Vancouver game. I don't think there were any studs to come out of those other two games, really. But yeah, I'll give my stud to David Pastrnak. Any thoughts on Pasta's performance this week, Jig?
I talked about this a little bit last week on the pod with Nick. It's like David Krejci gave him a call and said, "You don't have to score goals to get points. It's not the only way you can put points on the net. Every goal counts, whether you score it or you're setting up somebody else. And he's looked the part. He's looked really good. That I said it in the couple of overtime goals that Zaka scored, that Pasternak has been really great on the setups there. It's like adding another element to his game that we haven't normally seen or hasn't normally been the big focus. So
Yeah.
really happy to see that Pasternak is able to focus on, at least putting points up, even if he's not scoring the goals himself. I loved his goal in Vancouver. The drag, pull Demko all the way to one side, get the quick wraparound. It was a beautiful goal.
It's
But
gorgeous.
the gorgeous setups he's had over the last couple of weeks, it's very David Krejci-esque, and it makes me happy to see that, being a leader means sometimes taking that backseat and sacrificing your own goals to make sure that you get points and win.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that his play on the boards has been better lately. I mean, you alluded to that overtime goal for Zaka. It all happened because David Pasternak won a board battle behind the net and got possession of the puck against a D-man and then found Zaka backdoor, and he just was able to one-time it in. So Pasta's been trending in the right direction, I'll say, and I'm really keen on seeing that continue, hopefully. My dud for the week, it's really just because I'm tired of already hearing about this in the media. And he was -3 in that Seattle Kraken game, and I don't know. I've already talked about him. I'm not gonna beat him up anymore. Trent Frederick, you're my dud of the week. That's it.
We've beaten a dead horse on that whole situation, so I getcha. I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, my friend?
My stud of the week has frankly been a stud, I feel like, for the last couple of weeks, ever since he maybe made a little chirp at one Paul Bissonnette on TNT's pregame report.
That was so
Since
good.
that whole thing has happened, Brad Marchand has looked like the captain I've needed him to be on the ice. He's not forcing things. His plays are creative and working. I don't know whether it's puck luck as well and PDO and things are finding the back of the net. The game against Chicago, he has the penalty shot against Seattle that looks great. His goal against Vancouver, he's looking like he turned the clock back 5 years all of a sudden. So Brad Marchand, my stud of the week, I think he's just been putting the pedal to the metal so far since that. Just like genuinely, I think that maybe lit a fire on him, maybe put a little bit of joy back in him, a little bit of joy back in his game, and he's playing like it.
Yeah, I like that. I also liked his performance in the new NHL commercial about tipping. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
I sent it to a couple of my buddies, and I love that the NHL, they must have some Gen Z doing their marketing thing again, because it's a great commercial and it's exactly what they need. They need to attract the young crowd like this with a little bit of humor.
Yeah, yeah, it was great. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out on YouTube. It's basically, the premise is there's a bunch of goalies complaining about tipping culture, and it goes into the whole, why is everybody tipping so much? When you go out to grab a coffee or whatever, and it just says, oh, I hate tipping, la da da da, and then it shows a clip of the goalie that was complaining about tipping getting scored on by a tip, and then right at the very end, Brad Marchand walks up and he hits tip 63%. And he's like, "What? I love tipping." And Jeremy Swayman smacks him in the chest. So it's a very great commercial. So yeah, shout out to Brad on your acting. He's got that going for him.
He's got a career in something after this. I don't know what. I don't know if he joins Spittin' Chicklets or if he has some fun, but he's got a career in the media world after this, I feel like.
For sure.
But my dud of the week, though, I don't want to give it to one of the goalies because I feel like I want to put a lot of the pressure for giving up so many goals on the defense. And if you're going for a bad defense, your defenseman's defenseman is Andrew Peeke, who I think was a -3 in one game, a -2 in the other game. Just had a really abysmal week this week. So, I pointed the finger at Carlo. You pointed the finger at Carlo. I know he was on the ice for the goal in Vancouver, but I think that was more so a turnover on one of the forwards, and he was just caught in a bad place. But so I think I'm going Peeke as my dud of the week. I just don't think he looked great.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's hard for me to really put a lot of pressure on Andrew P because he's like my 6D man for me. So,
Yeah.
I expect more from like the top 4 guys. And I do think McAvoy's rallied a little bit here. I think that Carlo's been okay. But yeah, I mean, Peak, you can do better. I thought he had a great start to the year, and then when he got hurt, things have kind of fallen off a little bit. So yeah, I can see that. moving forward, looking forward, the week that will be, Boston Bruins will be underway. If you're listening on Tuesday, it's tonight. They're going to be at the Saddle Dome against the Calgary Flames. That's a 9 p.m. Eastern time start. So thank you very much to the Mountain Time Zone for not making me wait an extra hour. I like that. What are your expectations for this? Do you think Wallstrom will draw into the lineup, Jake?
I think he will. I think McLaughlin sits and Wallstrom draws in. I know he's already in there. The Islanders were in Central Canada a couple of weeks ago, so he was able to, easier for him to fly out. I say he draws in, and we see what happens. Also, a little note on the Flames: our days at the Saddle Dome are numbered. That they've broken ground and they started construction on Scotia Place, their new arena. So there's one more historic barn that's maybe going by the wayside sooner rather than later.
Which, from all reports that I've heard, I have not been personally. I've been to Edmonton to their barn, which is a beautiful new barn. I have heard that the Saddle Dome is a dump, and it's been more than time to go. But it is always sad to see some of those old barns with a lot of character. I mean, you look at their architecture on this building, and it's one of the most unique buildings in the entire league. The way that it goes down, and it actually looks like a saddle. That's why they call it the Saddle Dome. And if you're not familiar with the culture over in Alberta and specifically Calgary, it's basically like North Texas. It is like Canadian Texas. Like they have what's called the Stampede there. That is, like a whole week-long event, and everybody dresses up like cowboys, and they have people riding around horses in the summer and stuff. It's a big thing there. So, it'll be kind of sad to see another like giant. I hope it's not looking like a cookie cutter copy paste arena like you see throughout the league, and they're still able to have some unique qualities to the barn. But it'll also be good for their fans to be able to step into the 21st century too.
And the press, because I know that they have to walk all the way up to the top of the arena, cross a catwalk across the ice to get to some random gondola where the press box is. So maybe a little less perilous of a walk for those guys.
And I myself have a terror with heights, so I would hate that. Absolutely hate that. That's the one thing I don't do. I do not mess with heights. I get that weird feeling. I don't know if you get this, Jake, but when I'm like, let's say you go to like an observation deck on like a tower or something like that in the city, and you can obviously have the glass right along the side, and you can walk right up to it. I feel like my body is being pulled toward the edge, and I just like want to collapse. It's like just a friggin' terror for me. I can't do it. So
Yeah,
nope.
I get those knees buckling. Like, I hope this thing is stable enough to hold me.
Yeah. It's like I'm gonna like just fall to the ground like a toddler and start crawling. It's not great. And then afterwards, the Boston Bruins are going to be going to just north of Calgary and heading up to visit Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. And the Oilers have had a little bit of a shaky start, but they're still a very, very good team. And it'll be interesting to see which Edmonton Oilers the Boston Bruins will get on Thursday night. It's been a little while since they faced off against McDavid, so I'm looking forward to it.
McDavid, Draisaitl and company, I just hope that McDavid doesn't absolutely torch the defense, because in a game playing against his speed, I get very concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also have to shout out Evan Bouchard over there, who is a young defenseman for the Edmonton Oilers. I haven't seen a kid crank a slap shot like that. Like, he honestly reminds me of like Colton Parayko or even like I don't want to take the easy way out and say Zdeno Chara, but this kid just absolutely cranks him, and he always puts him in a great spot for guys like Draisaitl and bunch of the other Oilers forwards to get a tip on him. And he's a good top pairing young defenseman out there in Edmonton, and I'll be keeping an eye on him as well.
No, you're missing that old Johnny Rocket to compare it to. Johnny
There
Boychuk.
you go. Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, Johnny Boychuk. It was good to see him, and on another note, good to see him and a lot of the other 2011 guys for a Bruins alumni game for a charity event at Warrior Ice Arena a week or so ago. And they basically had the entire decor minus Tomas Caberlet playing for them. And I saw the one tweet. It was like, oh, the whole 2011 crew's here. And I responded. I was like, oh, Caberlet couldn't make it.
Didn't they have Marsh behind the bench too?
Yeah, Marchand was behind the bench. He was coaching. He's like, I want to know in my career, baby. So yeah, he's always got those one-liners cooking up. That Marchand guy does. So I still think it was funny. Like seeing all those guys together made me reminisce back. Do you remember that Zoom call that the Boston Bruins did during COVID, where they
Yeah.
brought like all of the 2011 guys back together to celebrate it? And, Caberlet did show up on that call for like 10 minutes, and then Greg Campbell called him fat, and he like disappeared. It was hilarious.
Oh, vey.
That call got unhinged, and I do know that they stayed on after they stopped recording, and I can only imagine how much worse it got after they stopped recording. I mean, you already had Tuukka Rask complaining that he had a bunch of daughters and he wished one of his daughters would grow a penis and other stuff like that. I think he even proposed to Michael Ryder to trade kids so he could have one of Ryder's sons and Ryder could have one of his daughters. Like, holy smokes! I think the juice was flowing on that call for sure.
Oh, I think pandemic mania, pandemic fever just got everybody like a little too hype about everything, and so it just was off the walls funny.
It was hilarious. I got to rewatch that thing again. I think it is still up on YouTube, so take a peek. All right, back to the week that will be. Boston Bruins are going to go back at home. The road trip will finally end next Saturday, the 21st. They're going to host the Buffalo Sabres, which I don't think I've ever seen a more cursed NHL franchise than the Buffalo Sabres. And I don't know, Jake, you want to break down what's going on with the Sabres right now?
Yeah, they're in as big a funk as you can imagine. The news was that Terry Pagula flew out to meet the team along with GM Kevin Adams and spoke with them and basically said, I believe in you. The solution is right here in this locker room. Like, when you hear Lindy Ruff saying, like, this is the biggest challenge I've had in my NHL coaching career for as long as he's been a coach, something's really wrong in that locker room. Someone in SB Nation Slack was talking about this today. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I don't know whether that applies to the Sabres hiring Lindy Ruff, or whether that applies to Lindy Ruff going back to Buffalo, because something is clearly not working there. They've got great pieces on that roster. Rasmus Dahlin, Dylan Cousins, Owen Power, JJ Paterka, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen,
Owen Byram.
Devin Levi. Yeah, they've got great pieces, and they just somehow can't put anything together at all.
Connor Clifton.
There you go. Cliffy hockey, baby. Not working. Absolutely not working. They are like the saber is pointed inwards. It's seppuku at this point. I don't know if you know the Japanese tradition where you lose your honor and you just like yourself there. That's basically what this team is doing to itself at this point. They've lost all sense of honor and they are just absolutely stabbing themselves right now.
Yeah, it's like they haven't made the playoffs since 2011. Is that what I read?
I think it's 2009.
2009. Holy smokes. Yeah. So it's been a hot second there. I think it's like 14 years now or something like that. 14, 15 years. Yeah. Not good. Not good. I think that was when the Bruins knocked them out in game 6.
Yep.
Miroslav Satan.
Miro the hero.
Goal. Oh yeah. I was in the barn, I think, for that one. That was a long time ago. Oh my gosh. But yeah, what a fall from grace. I mean, it's not like they've never won a cup either. And it couldn't happen to better people, honestly, if you know people from, I'm just kidding, people from Buffalo. You guys have the Bills, and I hate the Bills too. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I wonder if the Buffalo Sabres will actually respond from that sunshine and rainbows message. I don't think so, but
well, it's also their GM. We're a tough market to attract free agents to. We don't have palm trees. That whole palm tree quote is obscenely bad.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Guess who else doesn't have palm trees? Literally like 75% of the other teams in the league. So, moron. So that'll be interesting to see how the Boston Bruins do. I think it's an opportunity to take advantage of a weak opponent. Not on paper, but systemically and team wise, they just don't seem to be fighting for each other. So good opportunity for the Bees there on Saturday, and then on Monday the 23rd, your pre-Christmas game. The Boston Bruins are hosting the high-flying Washington Capitals. And it does seem like Alexander Ovechkin is on the mend. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there was a lot of concern when he went down in a game after a knee-on-knee hit. I mean, he had a tremendous start to the year, and it looked like it may be possible for him to surpass Gretzky's record this year, which was ahead of schedule. But unfortunately, he's missed a few games now. But he is going to be back soon. I don't know if he'll be back for that game on the 23rd. It wouldn't surprise me if he was, because he's back at practice and everything for the Caps. I gotta say, probably, just from a league perspective, I think the Washington Capitals are one of my surprises of the year, like the surprise of the year, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, absolutely. Well, so as far as Ovechkin goes, he is back in practice, but in a non-contact jersey. So, there's still a little bit of time. So I bet we probably don't see him next week. But, you know, as far as surprising teams, I don't think anybody would have put the Washington Capitals as one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, let alone the NHL at the beginning of the season. And a lot of credit goes out to Spencer Carberry. He, young coach, found a system that works. They built a team that's, a hybrid of speed and size. Dylan Strome's doing great there. Tom Wilson continues to be a pain in everybody's side. It seems like they figured out their goaltending situation a little bit with Logan Thompson. They're running a really interesting team right now. If it's sustainable, I couldn't say. But they're absolutely high flying is absolutely the right word for them. They're atop the flagpole right now as far as teams go, in my opinion, and a really, really hard out.
Yeah, I really got to give a lot of credit to a couple players too, I think, for the Capital success so far. I feel like, John Carlson's having a renaissance type season. He looks really good back there. He's been, and I'm going to break down this in a little bit, but John Carlson was named to Team USA for the Four Nations tournament coming up. That's going to be in Boston. So we're going to talk about that before we wrap up today. And then I also have to give a lot of credit to Dylan Strome, who they picked up, who's now their top line center. They got him for pennies on the dollar. A lot of people were clamming for the Bruins to pick him up, and probably would have been a good pickup. But for one reason or another, it didn't work out. But yeah, those two guys are a big reason why I believe the Capitals are doing so well, and it'll be very interesting to see how the Bruins are able to match up against them. I always feel like the Capitals give the Bruins fits.
Mhm.
They just seem like one of those teams that are like the Boston Bruins boogeyman. Kind of like whenever I saw Thomas Vanek on the ice, I was like, oh, those guys are Thomas is going to score on us. And, oh, the Capitals are going to do well against us. So
It's just the system that they have down there never matched up well against the Bruins. Never has.
yeah. Yeah. So I don't think we've talked too much about the Four Nations face off. That's going to be coming up in what is it? February? I believe?
February. It's mid-February.
Yep. So mid-February, it's going to start off over at the Les Centre Bell in Quebec, and then it's going to be finishing up in TD Garden right here in Boston. So you Bruins fans, you have an opportunity to see some light version of Best on Best. I keep hearing it being called Best on Best, and it's not truly Best on Best for me because we don't have Russia, which, political situation aside, I'm not going to get into that. I would love to see a Russian team in this, because there's a lot of really good Russian players in the NHL. There's no Czech team. We can't even see David Pasternak and Pavel Zacha, who should be there. You'd think with it Boston Bruins hosting this, partially at least, that we would have our star forward involved. There's just some obvious teams being not taken account of for. So, but we'll just kind of quickly provide. I'll give you the rosters here. We'll read them real quick, and then we'll kind of give our thoughts on the tournament, how we think it'll shake down. So Team Canada forwards: Sam Bennett, Anthony Cirelli, Sidney Crosby, Brandon Hagel, Seth Jarvis, Travis Konechny, Nathan McKinnon, Brad Marchand, Mitch Marner, Connor McDavid, Braden Point, Sam Reinhart, and Mark Stone. So that's their forwards. Defense: Cale Makar, Josh Morrissey, Colton Parayko, Alex Pietrangelo, Travis Sanheim, Shea Theodore, and Devon Taves. And goalies, it's probably the weakest part of their team for sure: Jordan Bennington, Aiden Hill, and Sam Montembeault. So what do you think of the Canadian roster?
I give credit where credit is due that Montembeault is having a good season, but defense is where this team is going to live and breathe with their really skilled offensive defensemen. Cale Makar, Travis Sanheim, a bit of a surprise pick, having a great year. Shea Theodore, Devon Taves. I know they've got incredible forwards. I know that Brad Marchand, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, Braden Point, Sam Reinhart, yada, yada, yada. But the fact that you're going to get so much offense from the back end, I think is going to cause teams a lot of fits. if they don't put as many
Yeah.
in the back of their net, because they also have to focus on their goaltenders, and frankly, their goaltending is very vulnerable.
Ugh. Yeah, not great. I would really love to see Kale McCarr and Devon Taves maintain that pair because they already have the chemistry together from Colorado. And I
Mhm.
would love to see a Nova Scotia line. Give me a
Yeah.
Brad Marchand, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon line. I think that would be awesome to see for the Four Nations tournament. I'm very keen on seeing, Connor McDavid play with a guy like Mitch Marner as well. I think that would be really kind of creative and fun to watch. Probably have to give him a safety binky for the third one on that line there for the defensive side of things. But that's going to be an interesting roster to see how they do. I think that it's going to be probably some scoring races against some other teams,
Mhm.
just because I'm not sold on the goaltending situation. We'll talk about Team Finland. No Bruins have made Team Finland. Not a lot of Finns. I don't think the Bruins have a single Finn on their
I
roster
don't
right
think so
now.
at all,
So,
no.
forward Sebastian Aho, Yoel Armia, Alexander Barkov, Mikhail Granlund, former Bruin Eric Holla, Rupe Hintz, Capo Caco, who allegedly is on the trade block, by the way. Patrick Laine, who has just returned to Montreal and has already been playing well for the Habs. Arturi Lehkonen, Anton Lundell, Etu Luisterainen. How do you say that? Is that
Luostarinen.
Luisterainen? Okay. Mikko Rantanen, who's a pending UFA, and Teuvo Teravainen. So obviously the skill level is a little lower here. I mean, that's to be expected when you have Finland comparing them to Canada. It's a very small nation and they small but mighty when it comes to
Yeah.
hockey. But they're gonna have to kind of play some stronger system stuff and kind of rely on, some coaching to get them if they're gonna be able to compete for a top spot here in the Four Nations face off. Defense also really kind of not great. They got Yanni Hakanpää. What a name, though. I love that name. Miro Heiskanen, Esa Lindell, Olli Mata, who's actually been playing really well with Utah, by the way. I didn't really expect that, but he's doing good. Nico Mikkola, Rasmus Ristolainen, and Juuso Välimäki. So not a lot of top pair guys there for best on best. So, but where they will absolutely kill it is in net. They've got some great goaltenders, especially with UC Soros. They have Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Love that name too.
Mhm.
The Finns have such good names. And the least Finnish name, Kevin Lankinen. Kevin is not a very Finnish name, but Lankinen's had quite a season over in Vancouver as well. So,
Yeah.
thoughts on Finland?
It's tough with that pick of the litter. I got a really good roster. Patrick Laine is having a good resurgence in Montreal. I know Heiskanen and Esa Lindell on as a top line, probably for their defenseman, is spectacular as it is playing out in Dallas as well. But it's more so a matter of country depth rather than overall skill, because it's a very talented team. It's a balanced enough team. It's just, is this strength enough to overcome the big stars here? I maybe want to see Jonas Korpisalo make this team as a third goaltender over Kevin Lankinen, considering the start to the year he's had. But oh well,
Yeah.
I can't blame him.
Yeah. One interesting note about Team Finland, and I just kind of put this together. The Florida Panthers are a very Finnish team.
Yeah, they've
They
turned
have
into Finland
4 of
South.
these players on this Finland team. That's wild. They got Sasha Barkov. They have Anton Lundell. They have Etu Luistarinen. I bet you I messed that up again. They have Nico Mikkola. So 4 Finnish players from the Florida Panthers have made this roster. Now the proud Scandinavian in me will keep a adoring eye out for Team Sweden. Elias Lindholm did make the team for Sweden. Interestingly enough, Hampus Lindholm did not. So that's kind of interesting. Their forwards, Victor Arvidsson, Jesper Bratt, Leo Carlson. So the young center from Anaheim gets the call, which is very interesting, I think. Joel Eriksson Ek, Philip Forsberg, William Carlson, Adrian Kempe, William Nylander, Gustav Nyquist, Elias Pettersson, Lucas Raymond, the diver, Mika Zibanejad are the forwards for Team Sweden. And that obviously includes Elias Lindholm. So I think it's more skilled than Finland for me for the forward group. But it still doesn't match up to Canada so far, as I'm concerned. You got some good two-way players in here. Mika Zibanejad is a good two-way centerman, good high-end offensive ability. I think he's down on the downswing right now, not doing great with the Rangers so far.
A lot
Bill
of people
Carlson.
calling him a power play merchant lately.
That's not what you want to be called. That's not what you
No.
want. Joel Eriksson Ek is a top two-way centerman right now. He's doing great with the high-flying Minnesota Wild team, who aren't really getting enough love, I think, in the league circles. So really like Eriksson Ek's game. Jesper Bratt's doing well with the Devils. So kind of an interesting mashup here on the forwards for Sweden. Defense, this is a really good defensive unit. Rasmus Anderson, who I think is criminally underrated over with the Calgary Flames. We'll see him coming up Tuesday night. Jonas Brodin, who is the captain of the Minnesota Wild, I believe. Rasmus Dahlin, former first overall pick of the criminally underperforming Buffalo Sabres, but really skilled player. They have Matthias Ekholm for the Edmonton Oilers. He's just a good two-way D-man, very stout. Gustav Forsling, really good D-man. Victor Hedman, I don't even need to talk about him. Everybody knows about Victor Hedman. And then power play specialist Erik Karlsson for the Swedes. So I really like that defensive unit. And then for goalies, this is a three-headed monster too. Something about over there in Europe, they just produce really good goalies between the Finns and the Swedes. Jacob Markstrom of the Devils, Linus Ullmark from the Ottawa Senators, and Philip Gustafsson from the Minnesota Wild are the Swedish goalies.
And that's a really interesting rotation with the three of them. Guys who are maybe starting to find a little bit more form. I know Ullmark's had a rough year in Ottawa, so maybe it was an interesting time to sell on him when Don Sweeney did. But Markstrom's finding his form in New Jersey. Gustafsson probably should have the Swedish crease. He's been fantastic and a huge part alongside Marc-Andre Fleury of why the Wild have done so well in the West. The roster is really fascinating. There's just one gripe I have with it, and this is because I'm a night owl and I love to watch these West Coast teams. William Eklund from San Jose, I'm extremely surprised didn't make this roster. He's a fantastic player, lighting it up offensively alongside Macklin Celebrini out there. Fabian Zetterlund is another Swedish guy out there in San Jose. But William Eklund, I'm extremely surprised didn't make this forward roster. Maybe they want to lean towards experience. Zibanejad's having a rough year defensively, but Gus Nyquist, really? Victor Arvidsson, you sure?
Yeah.
Those guys probably surprised me a little bit. I think there could have been other players who maybe were more well deserving in there, but still, they're a really interesting team for the most part.
Yeah, I concur. It'll be interesting to watch them, and I got to say, internationally, I think their jerseys are probably some of the coolest that are out there. That Trey Kroner, the 3 crown, beautiful gold and blue. I mean, Rasmus Dahlin's not going to have to change. He's already using the same colors, so it'll just work naturally for him. Team USA. I always hear it when I go to TD Garden. Fans of TD Garden love USA. USA. Matt Boldy. We'll start with the forwards. Matt Boldy, who's a stud, really good forward. Believe he's from Massachusetts too, isn't he?
Matt Boldy, I think so. He was a BC Eagle.
Yeah, I think he's a Boston boy. Kyle Connor, don't want to talk about 2015. Stop talking about 2015. Jack Eichel, Boston boy. Jake Gensel, Jack Hughes, Chris Kreider, Dylan Larkin, Austin Matthews, JT Miller, Brock Nelson, Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, Vincent Trocheck. So I like the forward group for USA a lot. It's got skill. It's got grit. Can you imagine the Tkachuk brothers on a line?
Scary. Scare the crap out of me.
Can you imagine? That would be so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh. Defense, Brock Faber, so basically baby Charlie McAvoy. Adam Fox, Noah Hannafin, Boston boy. Quinn Hughes, Charlie McAvoy, Jacob Slavin, Zach Werenski. Zach Werenski's had a hell of a season so far. He's probably my pick for the Norris Trophy right now.
this whole defensive core might be the best defensive core I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, I am so beyond amazed in the balance of two-way guys in Slavin, Adam Fox and Brock Faber and Werenski, who are incredibly on fire right now.
Mhm.
McAvoy, who can bring the boomstick. Hughes, who is the reigning Norris winner.
Mhm.
It's so incredibly balanced in every which way. I am beyond impressed with this blue line.
It was a really good team.
Yeah.
I think honestly, USA surpassed Canada this year. I
Yeah.
think that they are better top to bottom. And I forget the author, but somebody was like, we've entered the golden era of USA hockey. And if we can truly get some best on best, the USA has a good chance of really getting a lot of good stuff going. And we're going to see that in the 2026 Olympics, which is very, very exciting. The NHL returns to the Olympics in 2026, and we'll see. This is kind of like just an appetizer before the main course. So I'm very
Yeah.
excited for that. Goalies for USA, also really good. Really good. Connor Hellebuck, pending Vezina last year, probably one of the
Vezina
top
again.
candidates for this year.
Yeah.
Looked great against the Boston Bruins. Jake Ottinger, young goaltender for Dallas, played really, really well last year. I think he was a Vezina finalist, wasn't he?
Yep. And having a great year again this year.
Yep. He certainly looks better than the third guy. Jeremy Swayman was officially named to Team USA. Going to be the third string goalie right now, as far as
Probably.
I'm concerned. And he hasn't looked great so far this year, but we don't need to beat that dead horse. But he made the team. It'll be good to see him in Team USA stuff and repping his country. I know he always loved doing that. I think he got to play for World Juniors for USA a little bit, which was fun to watch.
Mhm.
But yeah, overall, my prediction is Team USA will take it. They're gonna win the gold medal game at home at TD Garden. Do you concur? What's your thought, Jake?
Yeah. There were also two big surprises on that USA roster for me, which maybe, again, they're prioritizing size over skill here is Cole Caulfield and Clayton Keller, guys who are two smaller forwards who are absolutely lighting up the NHL this year, guys who are absolutely unstoppable and somehow didn't make Team USA, which surprises the crap out of me, but I still think that whole roster is balanced and tough and, top to bottom scary enough to get through the whole gauntlet of things.
Yeah, and like I said, guys, there's going to be games right here at TD Garden. Tickets are on sale. I don't get a kickback by saying that, but go watch some fun international hockey. The entire hockey world's eyes are going to be on Boston, and it's good that it would be good for us to go out and show out and fill the barn and have a good time. So, I think that's probably it for today's episode. Jake, any closing thoughts for episode 62?
Ironically, I may be at the Bell Center for one of those games.
Ooh,
Little trip up. It happens to coincide with Valentine's Day weekend, and the girlfriend likes hockey too. She's like, you know what? Why not? So we might end up at the Bell
nice.
Center for one of those. But
That'd be fun.
yeah, that'd be really cool. But I'd say it's a really big week. You got to win, I think, at least 3 of the games this week. You finish out the West Coast trip really strong. Don't avoid that trap game against Buffalo, which you're coming home, you're getting back adjusted to the time zone. Don't let that be a trap game. Take 3 of the 4 games this week and feel a little better.
Yeah, leave it all out there too, right? I mean, there's only a couple of games, then you get a small break for Christmas. So we'll put the pedal to the metal here. So, all right, cool, Jake. Well, thanks again for coming in, buddy, and chatting with me. And to the listeners that are tuning in, thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate your listenership, and we'll be back next week, and we'll break down everything that happened for this upcoming week. So, until then, we'll talk to you later. Peace.